I beat my wife's male best friend so badly that he ended up in the hospital. In return, my wife escalated the case, accused me of aggravated assault, and personally sent me to prison for 3 years. The day I was released, she was waiting outside the prison in her black Bentley. Instead of apologizing, her first words were, "Chen Yi has forgiven you. Let's put the past behind us and start over." I accepted the new phone she handed me, but I didn't get into the car. Instead, I calmly made a phone call. Proceed with the agreement. At midnight tonight, revoke Qing Tang Technology's authorization to use the Ma Hong engine. The person on the other end hesitated for a moment before asking, "Mr. Shun, are you sure you want to activate the highest level revocation procedure? Once it's revoked, Qing Tang Technology will lose access to the scheduling system, cold chain risk control, and supply chain verification." "I'm sure," I replied. "I understand. CEO Zhao will find out soon enough." I ended the call. Zhao Wantong frowned. "Who were you calling?" "Someone I needed to speak to." Her expression darkened. "Xinyan Zhao, you just got out of prison. Don't start causing trouble again. I came here myself to pick you up. Isn't that enough to show I'm willing to let the past go?" At that moment, I realized those 3 years behind bars hadn't been wasted. They taught me one thing. When someone never admits they were wrong, asking you to move on is just another way of asking you to keep suffering in silence. She held out the coat she'd brought for me. "Come home. I've already cleaned the house." I spoke to Chen Yi as well. He said as long as you stop targeting him, he's willing to forgive everything. I didn't take the coat. The cold wind blew through the prison gate, but my heart had never been calmer. I looked at her and asked quietly, "He forgives me?" She nodded without noticing the sarcasm in my voice. "Yes, his health hasn't been the same since you hurt him. He spent 2 months in the hospital, but he doesn't hate you. He said you were just too impulsive. Prison was unfair, but it's over now. It's time to grow up and stop holding a grudge." Her words pulled me back 3 years. Standing in the hospital corridor, she had looked at me with the same expression and said, "Go apologize to Chen Yi. Whether you kneel or not is your choice, but you'd better show some sincerity." Inside the hospital room, Lu Chenyi lay in bed with a bandaged forehead, pretending to be the victim. "Wantong," he said softly, "don't force Brother Yan Zhao. He only acted because he cares about you." His fake kindness brought tears to her eyes. Then she turned to me with nothing but disappointment. "Xinyan Zhao, look what you've done to such a good person." I tried to tell her the truth. I told her Lu Chenyi had forged my signature on the authorization agreement. I told her he had altered the Ma Hong engine transfer documents and secretly used her personal seal to move the company's core assets to a shell company under his control. She didn't believe a single word. Instead, she believed Lu Chenyi when he said, "I only wanted to help the company go public. I never expected Brother Yan Zhao to misunderstand us." That so-called misunderstanding cost me 3 years of my life. And now she stood here talking about forgiveness. I took a step back. "I'm not going home with you." She froze. "What do you mean?" "It means there are only 2 things left between us." I opened the document my lawyer had sent to my new phone. First, divorce. Her fingers tightened around the coat. Second, the liquidation of everything between us. She stared at me in disbelief. I had never spoken to her like this before. The old Xinyan Zhao was gone. Before all this, I was always the one who gave in. When Zhao Wantong worked until dawn, I would wait outside her office until she was finished. When Lu Chenyi came down with a fever in the middle of the night and she asked me to deliver medicine, I went without hesitation. When the company's entire system crashed and everyone panicked, I stayed awake for 40 straight hours, recovering the data piece by piece. Whenever she told me, "Yan Zhao, Chen Yi is insecure. Don't argue with him," I listened. I never argued. Instead, I kept giving in, pushing my own boundaries back again and again until everyone around me believed I had no boundaries left. Zhao Wantong took a deep breath. "You just got out of prison. I don't want to argue with you. You're still emotional right now. Get in the car first. We can talk about the divorce later." I shook my head. "There won't be a later. I handed her my phone. On the screen was the first page of the divorce agreement my lawyer had prepared. She looked at it, and her expression immediately darkened. 3 years in prison really changed you, Chen Yi. It did, I replied calmly. Thanks to you. She reached out to grab my arm, but I stepped aside. Her hand froze in midair, her fingers slowly curling inward. 3 years ago, that small gesture would have been enough to soften my heart. Not anymore. Her voice grew quieter. Do you still hate me? No. She looked confused. Then why are you doing this? Because I don't want anything to do with you anymore. She let out a bitter laugh, the kind that came from wounded pride rather than amusement. You don't want anything to do with me? Chen Yi, do you even realize what your situation is? She glanced toward the prison gate before continuing. You just got out of prison. You have a criminal record. No company will hire you. I can give you back your old position as technical advisor at Qing Tang Technology. I've even kept your room at home. Just put your pride aside, and we can go back to the way things were. I almost laughed. She still believed I needed her. She thought I was walking away from my only chance at a future. What she never understood was that the most valuable thing at Qing Tang Technology was never her position as CEO. If you're enjoying our stories, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to us and helps us create more amazing content for you. We're on a mission to reach our first 1,000 subscribers, and every single subscription brings us one step closer. Thank you for being part of our journey. It was the Ma Hong engine, hidden deep within the company's servers. For 5 years, the company had relied on the technology one built. I didn't bother explaining. Instead, I picked up my worn canvas bag and walked past her. Behind me, she shouted my name. Chen Yi. She paused for a second before her voice turned cold. If you walk away today, don't come begging to me later. I turned around and looked at her one last time. No. That's what I should have said to you 3 years ago. Then I walked away. A black sedan arranged by my lawyer was already waiting at the curb. The driver stepped out. It was old Shin, one of my mother's former students and the man who had managed Yenzhou Technology during the 3 years I was in prison. The moment he saw me, his eyes turned red. Boss Shin. Zhao Wantong's expression changed instantly. Boss. Shin? I didn't explain. I simply got into the car. As we drove away, I looked into the rearview mirror. She was still standing alone outside the prison gate, the wind lifting the coat in her hands. It looked like an apology that had arrived 3 years too late. At 9:40 that evening, old Shin dropped me off at my temporary apartment. The place was small but clean. 3 documents were waiting on the desk. The first was the official notice revoking Qing Tang Technology's authorization to use the Ma Hong engine. The second was an audit request for Qing Tang's breach of contract. The third contained the appeal documents related to Chen Yi's case from 3 years ago. I took a shower, changed into clean clothes, and sat down at the desk. Exactly at 10 p.m. My phone rang. Zhao Wantong. I answered. Her voice was nothing like it had been outside the prison. She sounded anxious. Chen Yi. Is the system alert at Qing Tang because of you? I quietly opened the first document while listening. On her end, I could hear people running around. An assistant shouted in panic. Xiao Zhao. The cold chain dispatch system has stopped working. The North China warehouse is completely locked down. Trying to stay calm, Zhao Wantong demanded. What did you do? Did you revoke the authorization? Then she completely lost her composure. Are you out of your mind? Qing Tang has more than 300 active orders. Cold chain medicine for 12 hospitals is still in transit. If the authorization is revoked now, the entire system will collapse. I glanced at the confirmation notice on my computer. The revocation countdown had already begun. I answered calmly. The agreement gave Qing Tang 30 days to inspect its unauthorized use of the Ma Hong engine. During that time, you never stopped using it, never paid compensation, and never contacted me. You simply continued violating the agreement. She shouted back. I don't know anything about any agreement. Of course you don't, I replied quietly. My voice stayed calm. Because 3 years ago, you were too busy sending me to prison. Silence filled the line. After a moment, I continued. Zhao Wantong, didn't you say Chen Yi had already forgiven me? Then go ask him why he couldn't forgive an authorization agreement. She had no answer. At 10:43 p.m. The first monitor inside Qing Tang Technology's data center turned red. By 11:27 p.m. Three of the company's biggest clients had simultaneously issued risk notices. When the clock struck midnight, every external connection to the Mahong engine was officially cut off. A few minutes later, Zhao Wantong called again. This time, her voice was trembling. Shen Yen Zhao. Restore the system immediately. Whatever you want, we can negotiate. I stood by the window looking at the city lights. 3 years earlier, on the night I was taken away in a police car, those same lights had filled the streets. As the car drove away, I looked back one last time. The last thing I saw was Zhao Wantong helping Chen Yi into another car. She never once looked back at me. Now she finally had. But I was no longer the man waiting for her. I answered calmly, President Zhao, if you want to negotiate, contact my lawyer. Then I hung up. The screen went dark. Outside, a passing car disappeared into the distance. From that moment on, I knew Qing Tang Technology would never have another peaceful night. And Zhao Wantong would finally experience what it felt like to be pushed into the abyss by the consequences of her own choices. 3 years earlier, it was Qing Tang Technology's 5th anniversary celebration. The ballroom on the top floor of the hotel glittered with lights. A towering champagne display stood in the center while guests surrounded Zhao Wantong, congratulating her on the company's success. She wore an elegant black evening gown and smiled confidently as she gave interviews to reporters. Standing beside her was Chen Yi. He wasn't one of the company's founders. He wasn't the chief engineer. Yet he occupied the most prominent position on the stage. When the host introduced him, he smiled and announced, Please welcome Mr. Chen Yi, President Zhao's most trusted partner. The room erupted in applause. Meanwhile, I stood alone in the backstage hallway, holding the backup drive containing the scheduling system I had spent the entire night repairing. That evening wasn't just a celebration. Qing Tang was about to demonstrate its core system to a major client. If the presentation succeeded, the company's pre-IPO valuation would more than double. I was the one who had stayed awake all night fixing that system. But when the promotional video played on the big screen, I watched my name disappear. The slide that originally read, Mahong Engine Founding Architect, Shen Yen Zhao, had been replaced with, Strategic Vice President Chen Yi led the core model upgrade. I didn't create a scene. Instead, I quietly sent a message to old Gao in the technology department, who changed the introduction. His reply came almost immediately. Vice President Liu requested it. President Zhao approved it. I stared at those words for several seconds before locking my phone. Back then, I still wanted to believe Zhao Wantong had done it for the company's image. We had been secretly married for years. She always insisted that, before the IPO, people couldn't know we were husband and wife. She said investors would think Qing Tang was a family business. I believed her. I told myself that public recognition didn't matter. As long as she knew who had built everything, that was enough. Looking back now, I finally understood. When someone repeatedly allows others to erase your name, it's because your name never truly mattered to them. Halfway through the banquet, Chen Yi had his assistant ask me to come to the president's lounge backstage. When I walked in, I found him sitting comfortably in Zhao Wantong's usual chair. The temporary office had been prepared for the company's president. Zhao Wantong's handbag rested on the desk. Beside it lay her personal company seal. Chen Yi was casually signing the last page of a document with a fountain pen. When he noticed me, he didn't even bother standing. Brother Yen Zhao, you're here? He spoke as though he owned the room. My eyes fell on the document. What are you signing? Without hesitation, he flipped it over. Just some company paperwork. You aren't part of Qing Tang's management. So why are you signing company documents? Curious, I walked toward the desk. He immediately placed his hand over the papers. Don't. I ignored him and pulled the document away. The title on the first page immediately caught my attention. Ma Hong Engine Supplemental Authorization and Revenue Transfer Agreement Party A, Qing Technology. Party B, Qing Tang Technology. Party C, Chen Yi Consulting Management Company, Limited. My eyes locked onto Party C. I slowly looked back at him. Chen Yi Consulting? That's your company. He leaned back comfortably in his chair. Yeah. So what? I stared directly at him. Who authorized you to transfer the Ma Hong Engine's revenue rights to your own company? He answered without the slightest hesitation. Wantong approved it. His reply came too quickly, almost as if he had rehearsed it. I turned to the signature page. Under Party A's legal representative, my name had already been signed. Xin Yanzhao. The signature looked convincing. Whoever forged it had copied my handwriting almost perfectly. But they missed one detail. The final stroke of my signature was too light. When my mother taught me how to write my name, she always said one thing. The final stroke of your signature must be firm. Never let it trail off. I looked at the signature again. The last stroke was weak. It was fake. I closed the document and looked at Chen Yi. Do you know the consequences of forging someone's signature? The smile on his face faded slightly. Brother Yanzhao, don't make it sound so serious. The company is preparing to go public. A lot of things need to be restructured. You've helped Wantong for years, and everyone knows that. But just because you don't understand capital operations doesn't mean you should stand in the company's way. I met his gaze. So using Zhao Wantong's personal seal is also part of your capital operations? His eyes flickered for a moment before he regained his composure. Wantong trusts me. As he spoke, he deliberately turned his phone toward me. A chat history filled the screen. Zhao Wantong. Chen Yi, take a look at tonight's project documents first. I trust you. Chen Yi. Aren't you worried Brother Yanzhao will mind? Zhao Wantong, he's been too sensitive lately. Don't worry about him. Chen Yi. What if he misunderstands me again? Zhao Wantong. I'm here. Just 2 words. I'm here. I stared at the screen as my fists slowly tightened. Chen Yi watched my reaction with satisfaction. It was exactly the response he had been waiting for. He stood up, walked around the desk, and stopped in front of me. Brother Yanzhao, don't blame Wantong. She's exhausted. You can't help her anymore, and you're always so emotional. She has no choice but to rely on me. He leaned in closer and lowered his voice. Honestly, I feel sorry for her. A woman has to run a company this big, then go home and comfort your fragile ego. Don't you think she's tired? I remained silent. He smiled and continued. If you really love her, sign this agreement. From now on, let the Ma Hong engine be managed by the company. You won't have to worry about it anymore, and Wantong's life will be much easier. I looked at him. And if I don't sign? He smiled without hesitation. Then you're putting the entire company at risk. He opened another folder and pushed it toward me. Inside were several photographs. Every one of them had been taken from carefully chosen angles. One showed him driving Zhao Wantong home late at night. Another captured her adjusting his tie. One showed them standing close together in her office, talking. In another, Chen Yi rested his head on her shoulder with his eyes closed, pretending to be asleep. He slowly spread the photos across the desk. If these pictures ever reach the media, Wantong's reputation will be destroyed. So before the IPO, she needs a clean public image. And she needs a husband who won't make a scene. At that moment, I finally understood. This wasn't a negotiation. It was coercion. I turned each photo face down, one after another. Then I looked at him. Chen Yi, what do you really want? My authorization? Or my place beside her? He stopped pretending. Both. Just one word. But it cut deeper than any knife. He smiled calmly. You've spent 5 years by her side. Yet no one even knows you're her husband. Shen Yanzhao, have you ever considered that maybe she isn't hiding your marriage because she's afraid people will call Qing Tang a family business? Maybe. She just doesn't think you're someone worth showing off. I took a step toward him. He didn't move. Instead, he lifted his chin and looked at me with open contempt. What? Are you going to hit me? His eyes were full of provocation. You wouldn't dare. I could have controlled myself. I almost did, until he reached for a black USB drive lying on the desk. The moment I saw it, everything changed. That wasn't just any flash drive. It contained the earliest algorithm framework for the Mahong engine. More importantly, it held the research notes my mother had spent years writing before she passed away. I had kept it in Zhao Wantong's office safe because, back then, I trusted her. Chen Yi casually spun the drive between his fingers. Wantong gave this to me too. She said you're too stubborn. You don't understand commercialization. So from now on, I'll be responsible for all this old code. I immediately reached for it. He smiled, then deliberately let it slip from his hand. The flash drive hit the floor. Before I could pick it up, he stepped on it. A quiet crack echoed through the room. The sound was barely audible, but something inside me shattered with it. I grabbed his collar and slammed him against the desk. Try that again. He wasn't afraid. Instead, he smiled. Xin Yanzhao. So you finally threw the first punch. The next second, the lounge door swung open. Zhao Wantong stood frozen in the doorway. Behind her were two senior company executives. What they saw was simple. I was gripping Chen Yi by the collar. His forehead had slammed into the edge of the desk, and blood was running down the side of his face. Before anyone could react, Chen Yi released the pen in his hand, threw himself backward, and crashed into the glass coffee table. The table exploded into pieces. Glass scattered across the floor. A deep cut opened on his arm, and blood immediately began pouring out. Zhao Wantong's face turned pale. Shun Yanzhao. Before I could say a single word, Chen Yi clutched his bleeding arm and spoke in a trembling voice. Wantong, don't blame brother Yanzhao. He just saw us talking and misunderstood. Zhao Wantong rushed straight to Chen Yi's side, helping him to his feet. I was still holding the forged agreement. Zhao Wantong, look at this first. She didn't even glance at it. Enough. She looked at me, her eyes as sharp as knives. You beat someone until he was covered in blood because you were jealous. And now you're trying to distract everyone with some paperwork? I held the agreement out to her. Chen Yi forged my signature. Before she could respond, Chen Yi grabbed her wrist. Wantong, I didn't. Those are just the supplementary documents you asked me to prepare. I was only helping you organize them. Zhao Wantong lowered her eyes to his blood-covered hands, and her expression grew even colder. Xin Yanzhao. Apologize. For a moment, I thought I had heard her wrong. What did you just say? I said, apologize. She spoke each word slowly and clearly. The executives standing nearby stayed silent. Everyone was watching us. I looked at Zhao Wantong. 5 years of marriage. Thousands of days and nights together. Yet she wouldn't even look at the evidence in my hand. Leaning against her shoulder, Chen Yi secretly smiled. From where I stood, I could clearly see the corner of his mouth lift. That was when I finally understood. Nothing that had happened tonight was accidental. He had been waiting for me to lose control. I quietly placed the agreement on the table. Zhao Wantong. If you don't read this today, don't regret it later. She never picked it up. Instead, she held Chen Yi tighter and said coldly, call an ambulance. Then she turned to me, and call the police. The hospital hallway was filled with the smell of disinfectant. As Chen Yi was rushed into the emergency room, Zhao Wantong followed without hesitation. I remained outside. My hands were covered in blood. None of it was mine. Chen Yi had deliberately smeared his blood onto my sleeve. When the police arrived, I stayed calm. I handed them the forged agreement. This is what started the fight. The young officer accepted it and flipped through a few pages. His expression immediately became serious. We'll verify these documents. I nodded. Back then, I still believed the truth would eventually come to light. A little later, Zhao Wantong walked out of the emergency room. Her eyes were red. Not because of me. Because of Chen Yi. She stopped in front of me. The doctor says Chen Yi's right arm was badly cut. It may affect the fine motor skills in his hand. I looked at her. Did you read the agreement? She stared at me in disbelief. Xin Yanzhao. Is that really what you're worried about right now? Because it's evidence, I said. Evidence that he set me up. He wanted me to hit him. She let out a tired, sarcastic laugh. Do you really think everyone in the world is trying to frame you? I said nothing. She continued. Chen Yi already explained everything. That supplementary agreement was only a draft prepared for the company's IPO restructuring. It was never finalized. The signature was just a legal template, not an official document. I looked straight into her eyes. And you believe him? Why wouldn't I? She didn't hesitate. At least he wouldn't beat someone out of jealousy and pin them against a desk. The moment she said those words, I realized there was nothing left to explain. The police took me away for questioning. Zhao Wantong never came with me. She stayed at the hospital. At 2 o'clock in the morning, Lawyer Liang arrived. He had been one of my mother's closest friends. The moment he sat down across from me, I knew something was wrong. This isn't just an ordinary assault case anymore, he said gravely. I frowned. What happened? He slid a photocopied document across the table. Zhao Wantong submitted an official statement on behalf of Qing Tang Technology. My fingers froze. The company's official seal was stamped at the bottom. I lowered my eyes and began reading. The statement read, Shen Yanzhao, motivated by long-standing jealousy toward Chen Yi, deliberately used a dispute over the company's core authorization to provoke a conflict. During Qing Tang Technology's 5th anniversary celebration, he assaulted Chen Yi while attempting to steal confidential commercial documents related to the company's pre-IPO project. Every sentence was precise. Every word looked carefully prepared, as if someone had written it long before tonight. My eyes slowly moved to the signature. Zhao Wantong. She had signed it herself. After a long silence, I asked quietly, So, she refused to forgive me? Lawyer Liang nodded. And Chen Yi refuses to settle the case as well. I slowly closed my eyes. What about the surveillance footage? The hotel cameras only captured the moment you threw the punch. What about the cameras inside the office? Lawyer Liang shook his head. The hotel says the recording equipment malfunctioned. No footage was saved. I looked up at him. He looked back at me. Neither of us spoke. We both knew that wasn't a coincidence. Someone like Chen Yi would never rely on acting alone. He had planned everything in advance. The most important footage had disappeared. What remained was only the scene of me throwing the punch. Only him bleeding. Only Zhao Wantong walking in to find me gripping his collar. That was all anyone would ever see. The evidence against me had been arranged so perfectly that it looked as if everything had been rehearsed long before it happened. The next morning, Zhao Wantong finally came to see me. We sat across from each other in the visitation room, separated by a thick sheet of glass. She was still wearing the same jacket from the night before. Her makeup had faded, and dark circles lingered beneath her eyes. She sat down but didn't pick up the phone. I waited. After a long silence, she finally lifted the receiver. Shen Yanzhao, you still have a chance to end this. I looked at her without saying a word. She continued, Go to the hospital. Apologize to Chen Yi in front of the company executives. Admit you acted on impulse. Admit you misunderstood both of us. If you do that, I'll consider asking legal to resubmit the statement. I asked quietly, And if I don't? She frowned. Do you really have to be this stubborn? Zhao Wantong, I said. Do you even understand what that statement turns this case into? I know. She answered so quickly that my heart finally went cold. You know. And you still signed it. She pressed her lips together. I have to protect the company. Protect the company. Or protect Chen Yi. Her expression hardened. You're still blaming him. He forged my signature. Enough. Her voice rose for the first time. Shen Yanzhao, can you stop accusing him every single time? Do you have any idea how much Chen Yi has done for me since he joined the company? Can't you see that? I looked at her quietly. And what about me? She froze. I continued. Who built Qing Tang's first scheduling system? She didn't answer. When the East China cold chain network collapsed, who stayed awake all night recovering every bit of data? Her eyes shifted away. Wan Tong. When you couldn't secure funding 3 years ago, who used Yenjing Technology's patents as collateral to save the company? She finally lost her patience. What's the point of bringing all that up now? I nodded slowly. No point. As those words left my mouth, I felt strangely relieved. She still didn't understand. She never had. She frowned and said, apologize first. We can talk about everything else later. I won't apologize. Shen Yanzhao. And I won't sign any confession. Zhao Wantong stood up. Her eyes were filled with disappointment, anger, and the kind of exhausted superiority people reserve for someone they believe is being unreasonable. You'll regret this. I stood as well. Zhao Wantong. I gave you a chance to read that agreement. She turned and walked toward the door. I spoke one last time through the glass. If you send me to prison today, don't come begging me to come back later. Her footsteps paused, just for a second, but she never turned around. After that, everything moved exactly the way Chen Yi had planned. He remained in the hospital for 2 months. His injuries were judged serious enough to ensure I couldn't escape criminal responsibility. Zhao Wantong submitted a company loss assessment claiming that my violent behavior had delayed Qing Tang Technology's IPO, damaged client confidence, and endangered the safety of the company's executives. She also handed over screenshots of previous arguments between Chen Yi and me. Every conversation had been carefully cropped. The parts showing his provocation were gone. What remained made me look like an irrational husband consumed by jealousy. The day of the trial finally arrived. Zhao Wantong sat in the gallery. She never looked at me. Beside her sat Chen Yi, his arms still wrapped in a brace. The judge asked, "Do you admit your guilt and show remorse for your actions?" I answered calmly, "I admit that I hit him. But I do not admit to intentionally causing serious injury or attempting to steal commercial secrets." Chen Yi lowered his head. His shoulders trembled slightly, as if he were still suffering from the pain. Only then did Zhao Wantong look at me. Her eyes were completely cold. When the sentence was announced, I heard someone in the courtroom quietly gasp. 3 years. It wasn't the maximum sentence, but it was enough to tear my entire life apart. Before the bailiffs led me away, Lawyer Liang stepped closer. "Is there anything you want me to do?" I quietly placed a key in his hand. "Yenjing Technology's safe. 3rd shelf. There's a sealed file inside." He looked at me. "When should I open it?" I lifted my eyes toward the gallery. Zhao Wantong was helping Chen Yi to his feet. He leaned close and whispered something to her. She nodded. She never looked in my direction even once. I looked away. 3 years from now, the day I'm released. Lawyer Liang tightened his grip around the key. "What's inside?" I answered calmly. "The one thing she believes I no longer have." His expression changed, but I said nothing else. The bailiff led me toward the exit. Just before I reached the courtroom door, I heard Chen Yi's gentle voice behind me. "Wantong, don't blame Brother Yanzhao. He only did all this because he loves you." Zhao Wantong replied without hesitation. "If he really loved me, he wouldn't have destroyed my company." My steps paused for only a moment. Then I kept walking. The heavy iron door slammed shut behind me. I never looked back, because I knew some doors don't close to imprison you. They close to trap the people who built their lives on lies. 1 month after I entered prison, Qing Tang Technology released an official press statement. 1 month after I went to prison, Qing Tang Technology released an official press statement. The headline read, "Qing Tang Technology completes strategic upgrade of its core system. Vice President Chen Yi leads the team in building the next-generation intelligent cold chain scheduling platform." I came across it in an old newspaper in the prison library. In the photo, Chen Yi stood beside Zhao Wantong wearing a tailored black suit. His injured right hand was still supported by a wrist brace. Zhao Wantong stood next to him, holding the microphone while he spoke. A reporter asked, "Mr. Liu, despite your injury, what motivated you to keep leading this project?" Chen Yi smiled. "It was Wantong's trust in me, and my sense of responsibility to everyone at Qing Tang Technology." The room erupted in applause. I quietly folded the newspaper and put it back where I found it. Old Su, my cellmate, glanced at me. "You know them?" "Former colleagues," I replied. He laughed. "The way you looked at that picture. It wasn't the look of a former colleague. It looked more like someone waiting to collect a debt." I didn't answer. From then on, bits and pieces of news about Qing Tang continued reaching me. Chen Yi was promoted to strategic vice president. Zhao Wantong handed him complete control of the company's IPO project. Soon after, the company began removing everyone from the old technical team. Old Gao was transferred to an insignificant department. 2 engineers who had helped me build the Mahong engine resigned. Everyone else stayed silent. They all understood what was happening. Qing Tang Technology no longer belonged to the people who built it. First it became Zhao Wantong's company. Soon, it would become Chen Yi's. But there was one thing Chen Yi never truly understood. He knew how to package the Mahong engine. He didn't know how it actually worked. The Mahong engine was never just another piece of software. It began as a research model my mother created while studying pharmaceutical cold chain logistics. After she passed away, I spent years transforming that model into a complete intelligent operating system. It combined supply chain data, weather forecasting, warehouse temperature control, vehicle routing, hospital inventory management, and financial risk analysis into a single platform. That system was the real reason Qing Tang grew from a small startup into a company preparing for an IPO. It wasn't because Zhao Wantong knew how to impress investors. It was because the Mahong engine reduced product loss rates to the lowest level in the entire industry. 3 years earlier, when Qing Tang was on the verge of bankruptcy, I mortgaged Yanjing Technology's patents to secure the company's first bank credit line. Later, Zhao Wantong stood on stage pitching investors while I stayed behind the scenes fixing models and solving technical problems. During interviews, she always said Qing Tang's greatest strength was its outstanding team. I never corrected her, because back then, I believed we were a team. I believed that if she stood in the spotlight, then a part of me stood there with her. Looking back now, I finally understood. The greatest mistake a man can make is confusing someone else's success with a future you'll share together. 6 months into my sentence, Lawyer Liang came to visit me. He spread several pages of system logs across the table. Qing Tang is still using the Mahong engine. I wasn't surprised. Of course they are. They can't operate without it. He nodded. But the number of system calls has increased dramatically. Chen Yi is running IPO stress tests. He paused before adding, and they've connected several outside clients without Yanjing Technology's authorization. I picked up the logs. Every entry contained a timestamp, an interface record, and a client ID. Those records came from the hidden audit interface I had built into the system years earlier. I still remembered the day I created it. Old Gao had asked me, "Mr. Shun, is this really necessary?" "Ms. Zhao isn't an outsider." I answered him with a sentence I never forgot. Technology doesn't recognize relationships. It only recognizes permissions. I never imagined those words would someday save me. I slid the documents back across the table. "Keep monitoring them." Lawyer Liang looked at me. "Should we send a cease and desist notice now?" I shook my head. "No. The longer they continue using it illegally, the greater their liability becomes." "That's exactly what I want." He looked at me carefully. "So you're planning to destroy them all at once?" I smiled faintly. "I'm not trying to destroy them. I just want them to pay back everything they owe." But copyright infringement wasn't Qing Tang's biggest problem. The real danger was Chen Yi. Desperate to prove himself, He had begun modifying the Ma Hong engine's outer framework. He repackaged authorization interfaces that legally belonged to Qing Technology and labeled them as Qing Tang's own internal technology. If those changes appeared in the company's IPO filings, they would amount to serious false disclosures. If Zhao Wantong had known the truth, she would have shut everything down immediately. But she didn't know. Or perhaps, she simply didn't want to know. She only wanted to believe Chen Yi could successfully lead Qing Tang to its IPO the following year. Then he made an even bigger mistake. He established a new company called Chen Yi Consulting. On paper, it provided strategic consulting services. In reality, it quietly diverted part of the Ma Hong engine's project service fees into his own company. 3 years earlier, he had tried to steal the engine's revenue rights through that forged authorization agreement. When that plan failed, he simply created another shell company and continued stealing through a different method. When lawyer Liang brought me the evidence, I studied it for a long time. Not because I was shocked, because I almost felt sorry for Zhao Wantong. She had personally locked the gatekeeper behind bars and handed the keys to a thief. There's one more thing. Lawyer Liang pulled a photograph from his folder and slid it across the table. It had been taken during an internal Qing Tang Technology meeting. Chen Yi was sitting to the right of the main seat. Beside him, on the conference table, was a black USB drive. The moment I saw it, I recognized it. It was my mother's USB drive. The same one Chen Yi had stepped on and cracked 3 years ago. I thought it was completely destroyed, I said. Lawyer Liang nodded. He had it repaired. Some of the data was recovered. My finger slowly pressed against the photograph. Who gave it to him? Lawyer Liang didn't answer. He didn't need to. I already knew. Very few people had access to the safe in Zhao Wantong's office. Zhao Wantong always had the same explanation. For the company. That was her excuse for everything. She erased my name. For the company. She trusted Chen Yi over me. For the company. She sent me to prison. For the company. And now she had handed my mother's final keepsake to someone else. For the company. I set the photo down. Keep this evidence separate. Lawyer Liang looked surprised. Why? So I can show it to her later. He sighed. After everything that's happened, you still care what she thinks? I looked through the glass at the prison yard outside. The concrete walls stretched endlessly into the distance. No. I just want her to see for herself what kind of person she chose to trust. By the spring of my 3rd year in prison, Qing Tang Technology was entering the most critical stage of its IPO process. Around that time, Chen Yi gave an interview to a major financial magazine. One sentence stood out. The Ma Hong engine started as a rough prototype. What truly transformed it into a commercial success was the strategic restructuring led by Wantong, myself, and our team. The day the interview was published, Old Gao sent me a letter through lawyer Liang. The letter was short. President Shin, they're deleting the old repository records. Chen Yi is forcing us to change the original submitters to his name. I refused to sign. I don't know how much longer I can stay. When are you coming back? After reading it, I carefully folded the paper. Then I asked lawyer Liang to pass a message to Old Gao. Don't fight them. Resign. But keep every account log. Lawyer Liang looked at me. You only have 4 months left before your release. That's enough. He stared at me for a moment. Are you planning to strike back the day you get out? I picked up a pen and signed the authorization revocation request. The final stroke of my signature was firm and heavy, just as my mother had taught me. If Zhao Wantong realizes her mistake after I get out, I'll give her 24 hours. And if she doesn't? Lawyer Liang asked. I thought about Zhao Wantong's confident expression, the certainty she always carried, the certainty that she could never be wrong. Then I answered, at midnight, revoke everything. As it turned out, I had still overestimated her. The day she came to pick me up from prison, she didn't bring an apology. She brought Chen Yi's forgiveness. So when I made that phone call outside the prison gate, I didn't hesitate for even a second. For 3 years, they had used my work. For 3 years, they had built their success on my technology. For 3 years, they had climbed higher while standing on my name. All I was doing now was closing the door, letting them remain inside a building whose foundation they never understood, waiting for them to hear the first crack. Just after midnight, Qing Tang Technology's headquarters fell into chaos. It felt as if someone had pressed pause on the entire company. The North China warehouse dispatch screen turned red first. A few minutes later, the East China cold chain routing system failed. Then hospital deliveries across Southwest China switched into manual verification mode. Inside the operations center, engineers stared helplessly at their screens. Sweat rolled down their faces. The interface is down. It's not a network problem. The authorization has been denied. We've restarted everything. Still won't work. The underlying verification isn't passing. Who changed the core authorization? No one answered, because the one person who could answer that question had been sent to prison 3 years earlier. By them, when Zhao Wantong arrived at the data center, Chen Yi was already there. He was wearing a dark gray suit. His hair was still slightly damp, as if he had rushed over from a private event. The moment he entered, he frowned. What's happening? Technical Director Xiao Zhang immediately stepped forward. President Liu, all external calls to the Ma Hong engine are being rejected. The system is reporting authorization failure. For a split second, Chen Yi's expression changed, but he quickly recovered. That's impossible. The system is running on our servers. How can the authorization suddenly fail? Xiao Zhang hesitated before answering. The core module isn't actually hosted locally. We only access it through system calls. The underlying verification still depends on the escrow authorization key held by Qing Technology. Zhao Wantong immediately turned toward him. Qing Technology? Xiao Zhang lowered his voice. Mr. Shun's company. The room fell silent. Zhao Wantong's face darkened instantly. Before anyone else could speak, Chen Yi stepped forward. Wantong, don't let them panic. We've been operating this system for years. One authorization issue can't shut down the entire platform. Then he turned toward Xiao Zhang. Activate the backup system. Xiao Zhang's expression became even worse. He looked at Chen Yi and swallowed hard. President Liu, there is no backup system. The backup system can only keep the front end running, Xiao Zhang said nervously. The scheduling algorithms and risk control models require authorization. Without it, they won't work. Then bypass the verification, Chen Yi ordered. Xiao Zhang hesitated. Chen Yi's voice turned cold. I said bypass it. The engineers exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, one of the senior engineers stepped forward. President Liu, we can't. The Ma Hong engine uses a distributed signature verification system. If we force our way through it, the system will automatically record copyright infringement. A muscle twitched in Chen Yi's face. Who designed something like that? The engineer answered honestly. President Shin. The room fell into complete silence. Standing in front of the giant display wall, Zhao Wantong's face gradually turned pale. She took out her phone and called me. The first call went unanswered. When she called a second time, I finally picked up. I had just finished taking a shower and was drying my hair. The moment I answered, she spoke through gritted teeth. Shen Yen Zhao, restore the authorization immediately. I calmly set the towel aside. President Zhao, authorization isn't a light switch. Don't play word games with me. She spoke rapidly. Do you have any idea how many orders are stuck right now? This is malicious retaliation. I let out a faint laugh. So on my first day out of prison, you're already giving me another crime. 3 years ago, you accused me of intentional assault. Now you're accusing me of malicious retaliation. Zhao Wantong. You always seem to find the most convenient words. She clenched her teeth. Shen Yen Zhao. This isn't the time to bring up the past. For you, I replied quietly. It's never the time. There was a brief silence. Finally she asked, what exactly do you want? I glanced at the divorce agreement lying on the table. Talk to lawyer Liang. Her breathing became noticeably heavier. "I'm your wife." "Not for much longer." Another long silence. Then she asked quietly, "Are you really going to take this all the way?" I answered with a question of my own. "When you sent me to prison 3 years ago, did you ever think you had gone too far?" She didn't answer. I hung up. 15 minutes later, old Chen sent me a screenshot from inside Qing Tang Technology. Every monitor in the data center had turned bright red. I looked at it briefly and locked my phone. This was only the beginning. The real crisis facing Qing Tang wasn't that the system had stopped. The real problem was explaining to clients why the core technology of a company preparing for an IPO depended entirely on authorization from a small technology firm owned by the CEO's former husband. Even worse, for years, Qing Tang had integrated the Mahong engine into countless outside projects without ever obtaining extended authorization. At 1 a.m., the first client risk notice arrived. It came from Hongyuan Pharmaceuticals, one of Qing Tang's largest customers, with annual contracts worth nearly 100 million. The letter was short. It demanded that Qing Tang explain within 24 hours the authorization status of the Mahong engine, the reason for the scheduling failure, and how the company intended to compensate for any pharmaceutical cold chain losses. At 1:30 a.m., another email arrived. This one came from the bank's credit department. Because ownership of Qing Tang's core technology had become uncertain, the bank immediately suspended the company's supply chain financing guarantee. At 2 a.m., the IPO advisory firm called. They demanded immediate proof that Qing Tang legally owned its core technology. One notice after another landed on Zhao Wantong's desk. She read each one in silence. Standing beside her, Chen Yi looked equally grim, but he still tried to stay calm. "Wantong, this is Shen Yanzhao trying to force us into submission. He just got out of prison. He's acting irrationally. He's using the authorization to pressure you." Zhao Wantong didn't respond. Instead, she opened the company's contract management system. She searched for one phrase, Mahong engine. The very first result appeared. It was the original authorization agreement signed 5 years earlier. Party A, Yanjing Technology Company, Limited Authorized Representative, Shen Yanzhao. Party B, Qing Tang Technology Company, Limited. The scope of authorization was clearly stated. Internal use only. Limited exclusively to Qing Tang Technology's own pharmaceutical cold chain business. Without Party A's written approval, Qing Tang was prohibited from opening the system to third parties, granting sublicenses, sharing revenue, using it for capital restructuring, or claiming ownership of the technology during an IPO. At the bottom was one final clause. If any of these terms were violated, Party A had the right to revoke the authorization immediately. Zhao Wantong stared at the screen. Her hand froze on the mouse. Chen Yi saw it too. He immediately spoke up. "That's just the original agreement. Didn't we update it later with a supplemental authorization?" Zhao Wantong slowly turned toward him. "What supplemental agreement?" For the first time, panic flashed across Chen Yi's face. "I'll have legal find it." The company's legal director was called in immediately. He searched the contract database for nearly half an hour. By the time he looked up, sweat covered his forehead. "President Zhao, there isn't any officially executed supplemental authorization agreement in the system." Chen Yi frowned. "That's impossible." The legal director lowered his voice. "The only thing we found is an unsigned draft created on the night of the company's 5th anniversary banquet 3 years ago. It was never completed, and it doesn't contain Party A's valid signature." The office fell silent. 3 years ago, the anniversary banquet. For the first time, Zhao Wantong remembered that night. She remembered me standing in the hotel lounge, holding a document in my hand. I had looked straight at her and said, Chen Yi forged my signature, but she never even looked at the document. Instead, she called security. Then she called the police. Slowly, Zhao Wantong pulled her hand away from the mouse. Seeing the change in her expression, Chen Yi spoke quickly. Wanong, don't let him get into your head. That night, he beat me up because he wanted to distract you. She looked at him quietly. I didn't say anything. He immediately softened his tone. I'm only worried about you. Qing Tang can't fall apart right now. She stared at him for a few seconds before asking, then tell me, where is the supplemental authorization agreement? Chen Yi. He hesitated. It might still be in the old archives. The legal director quietly spoke up. I already checked the archives. There's nothing there. Chen Yi's face immediately darkened. At that moment, another call came from the technical department. President Zhao, the bypass method President Liu asked us to try has failed. She tightened her grip on the phone. If it failed, switch to manual. There was a brief silence before the engineer answered. President Zhao, it's not that simple. After the bypass attempt failed, the system generated a trace log. She frowned. What trace log? The technical lead swallowed nervously. The system automatically recorded the unauthorized access attempt and synchronized the log to the rights holder's audit terminal. Zhao Wantong suddenly looked up. Across the room, Chen Yi's expression finally changed. At exactly the same moment, a new notification appeared on my computer. 2:47 a.m. Qing Tang Technology attempted to bypass the Ma Hong engine authorization verification. I opened the log, downloaded it, saved a copy, then forwarded it to Lawyer Liang. The email contained only one sentence. Evidence of infringement. Item 1. A few seconds later, he replied. Received. I closed my laptop. The only light left in the room came from the desk lamp. I knew Zhao Wantong wouldn't sleep that night. For the first time, she had realized Qing Tang Technology wasn't as secure as she had always believed. And I was no longer someone she could bring back with a few casual words like, let's start over and live well together. At 9 o'clock the next morning, Qing Tang Technology held an emergency meeting. I didn't attend. Lawyer Liang went in my place. He entered carrying Yanjing Technology's legal notice and sat at the far end of the conference table. Zhao Wantong sat at the head of the room. She hadn't slept all night. Heavy makeup covered her face, but it couldn't hide the exhaustion beneath her eyes. Chen Yi sat on her right. That seat used to belong to me. Back then, nobody knew. As the meeting began, 3 video windows lit up on the conference screen. Hongyuan Pharmaceuticals, Beikong Group, Jizhou Medical. The first to speak was President Tao from Hongyuan Pharmaceuticals. He had always been straightforward. President Zhao, we don't care about your personal relationship. We only want to know one thing. Does Qing Tang Technology legally have the right to use the Ma Hong engine? Zhao Wantong's expression stiffened. This isn't a personal dispute. We're simply reconfirming some authorization documents. President Tao held a document up to the camera. Last night, Yanjing Technology formally notified us that Qing Tang Technology's continued use of the Ma Hong engine may constitute a breach of authorization. We signed a long-term cold chain service contract. We didn't sign up to gamble on who owns your technology. Before Zhao Wantong could answer, Chen Yi interrupted. President Tao, the Ma Hong engine has been independently upgraded by Qing Tang's technical team over the past several years. It's no longer just the original system authorized by Yanjing Technology. For the first time since the meeting began, Lawyer Liang spoke. Mr. Liu, I suggest you be very careful with that statement. Everyone turned to look at him. Without saying another word, Lawyer Liang placed a thick file in the middle of the conference table. These are the 3 core patent certificates for the Ma Hong engine. These are the original source code submission records. And these are Qing Tang Technology's system call logs from the past 5 years. He paused before continuing. According to these records, more than 80% of Qing Tang's so-called independent upgrades still rely on modules authorized by Yanjing Technology. Chen Yi's face darkened. You're only Shen Yanzhao's lawyer. You have no right to sit in Qing Tang's internal meeting. Lawyer Liang remained perfectly calm. I am also the legal representative of Yanjing Technology. And what Qing Tang is discussing today is our intellectual property. The room became silent again. Without saying a word, Zhao Wantong picked up the file. The first page was the patent certificate. Inventor, Shen Yanzhao. Rights holder, Qing Technology. She turned the page. The second page contained the original system architecture. The third listed 5 years of system call records. Every line, every timestamp, every authorization request. The evidence was complete. There was nothing left to argue about. As Zhao Wantong continued reading, she turned each page more slowly than the last. Then President Tao's voice came through the speakers again. President Zhao. In Qing Tang's IPO proposal, your company clearly stated that the core technology was independently developed by Qing Tang Technology. Now we're seeing that the legal rights belong to Qing Technology. I think you owe us an explanation. For the first time that morning, Zhao Wantong looked directly at Chen Yi. Who changed the IPO proposal? Without missing a beat, Chen Yi replied, the listing materials were prepared by the entire team. There may be some technical wording that isn't completely accurate. Lawyer Liang calmly pulled out another document. This is the version personally reviewed and approved by Mr. Liu. He placed the copy on the table. Everyone's eyes immediately went to the last page. Chen Yi's signature was clearly visible. Above it was the statement, Technology Ownership Declaration. The Ma Hong engine is independently developed by Qing Tang Technology, with its core commercial restructuring completed by Chen Yi's team. The conference room became so quiet that the sound of the air conditioner was almost deafening. The smile finally disappeared from Chen Yi's face. This is standard wording used for capital market documents, he said quickly. It doesn't represent legal ownership. Lawyer Liang nodded calmly. Then perhaps you can explain something else, Mr. Liu. He pulled out another file. Over the past 2 years, your company, Chen Yi Consulting Management Company, Limited, has received 43 million yuan in strategic technical service fees from Qing Tang Technology. The service description for every payment reads, Ma Hong Engine Commercialization Upgrade. Chen Yi stared at him. You're investigating me? It's called an audit, Lawyer Liang replied. President Tao spoke coldly through the video screen. President Zhao, if Qing Tang has internal conflicts involving its core technology, we'll have to reconsider our cooperation. The representative from Beikong Group spoke next. Our shipments are still on the road. Who will be responsible for the losses? Only then did Zhao Wantong speak. Qing Tang Technology will take responsibility for everything it should. Lawyer Liang placed one final document on the table. This is Qing Technology's formal legal notice. He read it aloud. First, Qing Tang Technology must immediately stop all unauthorized use of the Ma Hong engine. Second, within 3 days, submit a complete list of every unauthorized external deployment made during the past 3 years. Third, provide a full accounting of all profits earned through the unauthorized use of the technology. Fourth, Qing Technology reserves the right to pursue legal action regarding forged signatures, unauthorized sublicensing, and false declarations of technology ownership. The moment Zhao Wantong heard the words forged signatures, her fingers visibly froze. Chen Yi immediately stood up. This is Shen Yanzhao taking revenge. He just got out of prison and now he's trying to destroy Qing Tang. Lawyer Liang looked at him calmly. Mr. Liu. 3 years ago, Mr. Shen personally handed President Zhao the original agreement and asked her to read it. Zhao Wantong's face immediately changed. Chen Yi slammed his hand on the table. What are you trying to imply? Lawyer Liang remained unhurried. 3 years ago, backstage during Qing Tang's anniversary banquet, the document Mr. Shen was holding was the supplemental authorization agreement containing the forged signature. President Zhao never looked at it. Every eye in the room slowly turned toward Zhao Wantong. She tightened her grip on the file. She wanted to deny it, but the memory came rushing back. She remembered me standing there. She remembered me saying, Chen Yi forged my signature, and she remembered her own reply. Enough. Those two words echoed in her mind like a boomerang finally returning. Trying to recover, Chen Yi hurriedly said, "Wantong, don't believe him. He's trying to make us turn against each other." Zhao Wantong slowly raised her eyes. "That draft. You told me it was only a legal template." "It was." "Then why isn't there any officially signed copy in the system?" He hesitated. "It was a hectic time. It probably was never archived." She looked at him without blinking. "Then why did you have my personal company seal?" He paused again. "You gave it to me. I gave you my seal. So you could forge Shen Yanzhao's signature." For the first time, all the color drained from Chen Yi's face. The meeting room fell silent. Some people lowered their heads. Others pretended to read documents in front of them. Those who had defended Chen Yi just moments earlier suddenly didn't dare say another word. Realizing she had lost control of the conversation, Zhao Wantong took a slow breath. She turned toward the clients on the video screen. "Everyone, Qing Tang Technology will provide a written explanation within 24 hours. President Tao nodded coldly. "We only care about the outcome." The video conference ended. As soon as the screens went dark, board member Chen Jingxing tapped the table. He was Qing Tang's second-largest shareholder and had always been Zhao Wantong's strongest supporter. But today, his expression was unusually serious. "Wantong, I only have one question. What exactly was Shen Yanzhao's role in Qing Tang Technology?" Zhao Wantong didn't answer. Chen Jingxing continued. "Was he simply your ex-husband who went to prison? Or is he the true owner of Qing Tang's core technology?" The room became even quieter. Even Chen Yi didn't dare interrupt. After a long silence, Zhao Wantong finally spoke. "The original system was indeed built by him." "The original system?" Chen Jingxing picked up the stack of system call logs and slapped them onto the table. "These records show Qing Tang was still relying on his core modules as recently as last night." "And you're calling that the original system?" Zhao Wantong opened her mouth, but no words came out. Chen Jingxing looked directly at her. "Tell me, exactly how much did your husband leave behind before he went to prison?" No one answered, because the truth was even more frightening than anyone had imagined. The real question wasn't how much I had left behind. It was how much Qing Tang had left after I finally took it away. After the meeting ended, Zhao Wantong remained alone in the empty conference room. Chen Yi quietly walked toward her. Before he could speak, she raised a hand. "Leave." He froze. "You suspect me?" She never looked at him. "I don't trust anyone right now." Chen Yi stood there for several silent seconds. Then he slowly turned around and walked out of the room. After the door closed, Zhao Wantong took out her phone and called me. When I answered, I was back in the old office of Yenqing Tech. The office had been locked for 3 years. Old Chen had just finished cleaning it. My old mechanical keyboard was still sitting on the desk where I had left it. I answered the call. Her voice was quiet. "Shen Yanzhao. That agreement. Did you really try to show it to me 3 years ago?" I looked at the dusty plant sitting by the window. "You never looked at it." She was silent for a long time. It doesn't matter anymore." Her voice suddenly became anxious. "It does matter. Tell me what really happened that night." I answered calmly. "President Zhao, the truth is expensive now." She paused. "What do you mean?" "If you want the truth, sign for the lawyer's letter first." Then I hung up. Old Chen was standing nearby with another stack of documents. "President Chen, we've traced the cash flow from Chen Yi's shell company." I took the files. The first suspicious payment came from Qing Tang Technology's IPO service account. Amount 3 million yuan. Purpose: technical consulting. Date: the 7th day after I was sent to prison. I quietly closed the file. "Send everything to lawyer Liang." Old Chen nodded. Right now. Right now." I walked over to the window. Across the street stood Qing Tang Technology. Its glass curtain wall reflected the afternoon sunlight. 3 years ago, I had been taken away from that building. 3 years later, The first crack had finally appeared. On the third day after my release, Zhao Wantong came to see me. That evening, her black Bentley stopped outside Qing Technology. She didn't ask the driver to come upstairs. She waited beside the car herself. When I came downstairs, she looked up at me. She had changed into a gray coat, and her hair was tied back. She looked far more exhausted than she had 3 days earlier. "Let's talk." I glanced at my watch. "My lawyer will be here soon." She frowned. "Do we really have to talk through lawyers now?" "We do." She flinched. Those simple words clearly hurt her. "Shen Yanzhao. I know you're still angry." I didn't answer. She took a step closer. "Qing Tang is in serious trouble. The clients, the banks, the investment firms. Everyone is waiting for an explanation. Please restore the authorization temporarily. I promise we'll investigate Chen Yi's issues afterward." I looked at her. "Afterward?" "Yes." "Until when?" She pressed her lips together. "At least let the company stabilize first." I smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. "So the company still comes before the truth." Her face darkened. "Qing Tang has hundreds of employees. It isn't just my company." I looked straight at her. "When I went to prison, I was completely alone." Her eyes shifted slightly. I continued. "Back then, you didn't say later. You submitted the evidence immediately. You rejected leniency immediately. And your legal team labeled me with intentional assault just as quickly." Her voice became softer. "I didn't know those documents had problems back then. You were too emotional. Chen Yi was covered in blood. You only saw him." She fell silent again. A passing car swept its headlights across her face. For the first time, I realized Zhao Wantong didn't know what to do. She had always been decisive, always confident, always in control. But now the contracts, the system, the clients, and the board were all collapsing around her. For the first time, she looked shaken. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "I admit, I handled everything too harshly back then. Too harshly." She still refused to admit she had been wrong. I nodded and took a document from my bag. "Then let's deal with this first." She accepted it. The moment she opened the first page, her fingers froze. Divorce agreement. She immediately looked up. "Shen Yanzhao, are you really forcing me now?" "I'm not forcing you. I'm informing you. I won't sign. Then I'll file for divorce in court." Anger finally appeared in her eyes. "Do you really have to turn our marriage into this?" I looked at her calmly. "Zhao Wantong, you're the one who turned our marriage into a criminal case." It was as if she had been slapped. The color drained from her face. A moment later, she straightened her back. "What compensation do you want? Just name it." "I don't want compensation. The house, cash, company shares. We can negotiate." I shook my head. "I want the records corrected." She froze. I continued. 3 years ago, Qing Tang Technology issued a public statement. I want you to publicly correct it. Admit that you never verified the key evidence. Admit the company's public statements were misleading. And cooperate with my appeal. Her hands slowly tightened around the document. "Do you understand what this will do to Qing Tang?" "Yes. The IPO will stop completely. And that's the price Qing Tang has to pay." Her voice trembled. "Shen Yanzhao, you're trying to destroy me." I slowly shook my head. "No. I'm only asking you to face the truth." "I'm not trying to destroy you," I said calmly. "I'm only opening the lid you chose to keep closed 3 years ago." Her breathing grew heavier. "And if I refuse? Then we'll settle this according to the contract." Her expression turned cold again. "Do you really think you can rebuild everything without Qing Tang? You may have the technology, but the market, investors, and clients aren't things someone with a prison record can just win back." The moment she finished speaking, she seemed to realize how cruel it sounded. But once words are spoken, they can't be taken back. I wasn't angry. I simply took the divorce papers back from her hands. "You still believe I can't survive without you?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I turned to leave. Suddenly, she grabbed my sleeve. Yan Zhao. It was the first time in days she'd called me by my name instead of my full name. I stopped. Her voice softened. Our 5 years together. They shouldn't end like this. I lowered my eyes to the hand holding my sleeve. That same hand had once brought me coffee while I stayed up all night fixing the system. It was also the hand that signed the legal documents that sent me to prison. Slowly, I removed her fingers from my sleeve. Zhao Wantong. It was you who sent those 5 years of marriage to prison. Her eyes turned red. This time, I didn't look back. Upstairs, old Chen was already waiting for me. Chen Yi made his move. He handed me a laptop. The screen showed real-time alerts from the hidden audit system. Chen Yi had hired an outside cybersecurity team. They were trying to copy the Ma Hong engine by accessing an old interface. I looked at the IP address. He really has guts. Old Chen asked, "Should we call the police?" Not yet. I opened the intrusion report. 3 security warnings had already been triggered. One more attempt would complete the entire evidence chain. Let him continue. Old Chen looked uneasy. What if they actually copy part of the system? They can't. I closed the report. The real value of the Ma Hong engine isn't the source code. It's the authorization key and the real-time training data. Chen Yi is only copying the shell. It'll never work. Just as I expected. 30 minutes later, the 4th red warning appeared. The illegal duplication attempt had been completely recorded. I exported the evidence package and immediately sent it to Lawyer Liang. That evening at 8 o'clock, Qing Tang Technology was thrown into chaos once again. The outside cybersecurity team had been locked out by the system itself. Every operation had been logged under Chen Yi's account. Xiao Zhang from the technical department delivered the report directly to Zhao Wantong. She stared at it for a long time. Chen Yi hurried to explain. "Wantong, I was only trying to help the company recover." She looked at him quietly. "By using illegal hacking methods? It was an emergency. Who gave you permission?" Chen Yi froze. Those simple words frightened him more than any accusation. He finally began to panic. "Wantong, Shen Yanzhao is trying to drive us apart. He's using the contract to pressure you now. The next step is making you throw me out. Don't forget why he attacked me 3 years ago." Zhao Wantong answered softly, "I haven't forgotten." "Then why are you doubting me?" She slowly looked up. "I just want to know how much you've been hiding from me." Chen Yi's face instantly changed. At the same time, I received a message from Lawyer Liang. Chen Yi is starting to lose control. I replied with one sentence. Time to add fuel to the fire. He asked, "How?" I took a picture of one of the sealed files I'd given him 3 years earlier. The title read, "Abnormal Cash Flow Report for Chen Yi Consulting Management Company, Limited." I sent him the photo along with one instruction. "Deliver this to Qing Tang's board tomorrow morning." After sending the message, I leaned back in my chair. The night outside the window was dark and quiet. Zhao Wantong still believed she had time to investigate everything slowly. But I had already waited 3 long years. I wasn't going to give them another day. The next morning, Shengyuan Holdings released a public announcement. The statement was brief. Shengyuan Holdings would resume its strategic partnership with Qing Technology to jointly develop the independent commercialization of its pharmaceutical cold chain intelligent dispatch system. The announcement also officially confirmed that Qing Technology was the sole legal owner of the Ma Hong engine, and that Shen Yanzhao was the system's original creator. 10 minutes after the announcement went public, Qing Tang Technology's shareholder group exploded with messages. Half an hour later, 3 major clients contacted me one after another. President Tao personally came to Qing Technology. As he entered the office, he quietly looked around. There were no luxurious decorations like Qing Tang's headquarters. Only a few desks, several servers. Old system architecture diagrams were still taped to the walls. Yet there wasn't a trace of contempt on his face. Instead, he walked over and shook my hand firmly. "President Shen, I've heard a great deal about you." I smiled politely. You're too kind, President Tao. After sitting down, he didn't waste any time. He went straight to the point. Our contract with Qing Tang hasn't been terminated yet, President Tao said. But now that the core system license belongs to Qing Technology, we need a transition plan. I handed him a prepared document. That's already been arranged. Qing Technology will take over the dispatch system, but we won't assume any of Qing Tang's past liabilities for breach of contract. Cold chain safety comes first. Business disputes are a separate matter. President Tao read through a few pages before looking up. You don't seem like someone who just got out of prison. I answered calmly. You can still read and think in prison. He laughed. President Chen, that's not what I meant. I mean you've stayed remarkably calm. I met his eyes. Because I've had 3 years to think about this. The smile faded from his face. Then let me be direct. Hongyuan Pharmaceuticals is willing to sign a temporary service agreement with Qing Technology. But we need to know one thing. Will you use your clients as tools for revenge? I slid another document across the table. This is the risk mitigation plan. Before revoking the authorization last night, I made sure every pharmaceutical shipment already in transit could continue through the manual emergency channel. The only systems that were actually affected were Qing Tang's unauthorized commercial operations and financial risk models. No hospital will suffer because of my decision. President Tao carefully read every page. His expression changed. So, before you revoked the authorization, you'd already separated anything related to patient safety. I nodded. I'm not Chen Yi. Silence filled the room. A moment later, President Tao nodded. I understand. By noon, Hongyuan Pharmaceuticals became the first client to officially request a direct service transition with Qing Technology. Soon afterward, Beikong Group and Jizhou Medical followed. The 3 largest clients Qing Tang depended on had all begun bypassing Zhao Wantong. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, Zhao Wantong called me. I didn't answer. Instead, she sent a message. Xinyan Zhao, are you really going to take all of our clients? I saw it but didn't reply. 3 minutes later, another message arrived. Let's meet. This time I'm willing to correct the public statement. I replied with only 4 words. Contact my lawyer. She didn't send anything else. But I knew she was finally beginning to panic. Not because I ignored her, but because she had finally realized. I no longer needed her recognition. She had always believed she was the one who gave me my platform. She thought I had hidden behind her because I couldn't stand on my own. What she never knew was that, years ago, when Qing Tang was struggling to survive, Xingyuan Holdings had approached Qing Technology first. Not Qing Tang. I was the one who gave that opportunity to her. Because before he passed away, Zhao Wantong's father held my hand and said, Yan Zhao, Wantong is too stubborn. She's always trying to prove herself. Please help her. Don't let her fall too hard. I promised him. So I gave Qing Tang my best technology, my strongest clients, my most valuable guarantees. I believed we were building our future together as husband and wife. Later, she mistook my sacrifice for her own success. At 4 o'clock that afternoon, Qing Tang Technology held a special board meeting. This time, I wasn't there as Zhao Wantong's husband. I attended as the legal representative of Qing Technology. When I walked into the conference room, the atmosphere immediately became tense. 3 years earlier, many of those same people had watched the police take me away. Some lowered their eyes. Others pretended to study the documents in front of them. Chen Yi sat beside Zhao Wantong. The moment he saw me, his expression darkened. Xinyan Zhao, you actually have the nerve to come here. I looked at him calmly. If you still have the nerve to sit there, why wouldn't I have the nerve to come? He was about to argue when Director Chen Jingxing tapped the table. This is a board meeting, not a street fight. I sat down and placed my documents on the table. Lawyer Liang stood and formally presented Qing Technology's demands. Immediate termination of all unauthorized use. A full accounting of all profits earned through infringement. Complete submission of every system call log. full cooperation in the investigation into the forged signature. The director's expressions became increasingly serious. Every one of those demands meant enormous financial losses. Director Chen Jingxing turned toward Zhao Wantong. Wantong, were you aware of these authorization issues? She pressed her lips together. I knew about the original authorization, but I believed the later agreements had already been completed. Chen Jingxing immediately asked, and who told you that? Every pair of eyes in the room turned toward Chen Yi. He straightened in his chair. I was responsible for strategic implementation. Legal archiving wasn't my department. If there were problems with the paperwork, they shouldn't all be blamed on me. Without saying a word, I slid a document across the table. What about the technical upgrades? Chen Yi frowned. I continued. You've publicly claimed that the commercial restructuring of the Mahong engine was completed by you. So tell us, which part of the system did you actually rebuild? He let out a cold laugh. Are you really going to discuss technology with me? We don't have to argue. I opened my laptop. The conference room screen lit up. There was no flashy presentation, no polished slides, only 3 code submission records projected onto the screen. I projected 3 code commit records onto the screen. The first was from 5 years ago, committed by Xin Yanzhao. The second was from 4 years ago, committed by Xin Yanzhao. The third was from the night before Qing Tang's anniversary banquet 3 years ago, committed by Xin Yanzhao. Then I opened the records Chen Yi had called his core upgrades. Most of them were nothing more than cosmetic changes. Renamed buttons, new report layouts, updated demo pages. I looked at him. Director Liu, you changed a button from blue to green and called it a core system upgrade. Someone in the room quietly coughed. Chen Yi's face immediately flushed. Technology commercialization isn't just about writing code. Fine. Then let me ask you something simple. I turned toward President Tao, who was joining the meeting by video. He immediately understood. Director Liu, he asked, if a snowstorm suddenly hits North China and 37 refrigerated trucks are forced off their planned routes at the same time, how would the Mahong engine recalculate hospital delivery priorities? Chen Yi froze. He opened his mouth but couldn't answer. Finally he said, the technical team would need to handle a question like that. President Tao interrupted him. Director Xin could answer that in less than 15 seconds. The room fell silent. I answered calmly. First, secure all emergency medication deliveries. Second, calculate the remaining safe temperature window. Third, reroute shipments based on each hospital's emergency inventory level. Qing Tang's manual backup process skipped the second step. That's why your North China warehouse came to a complete stop last night. President Tao nodded. And that's exactly why we chose Yenqing Technology. Chen Yi's face slowly stiffened. At that moment, he finally understood. I hadn't stolen the clients. They had simply returned to the person who could actually solve their problems. Before the meeting ended, Director Chen Jingxing closed his folder. President Zhao, I recommend immediately suspending all of Chen Yi's access to core company projects until the audit is complete. Chen Yi shot to his feet. Director Chen, you don't have the authority to do that. Chen Jingxing looked at him calmly. Whether I have that authority or not, legal can explain it to you. Zhao Wantong sat silently at the head of the table. Her fingertips had turned white from gripping the chair. She didn't defend Chen Yi. He looked at her anxiously. Wantong. She slowly closed her eyes. Chen Yi. Your permissions are suspended for now. Those words landed like a slap across his face. He stood there in disbelief, his expression twisted with panic. I packed up my files and stood. As I reached the door, Zhao Wantong called after me. Xin Yanzhao. I stopped. She looked at me. Her voice was low and exhausted. Why didn't you ever tell me Qing Tang depended on you this much? I turned around. I did. She froze. Every time the system crashed. I told you. Every time the company faced funding risks. I told you. Every time Chen Yi interfered with system permissions. I told you that too. I looked briefly at Chen Yi. You just never listened. With that, I walked out of the conference room. No one followed me, because everyone finally understood. It wasn't me leaving Qing Tang. It was Qing Tang finally admitting that it had never truly owned me. After Chen Yi's permissions were suspended, he didn't give up. People like him weren't good at winning fairly. They were good at creating chaos. The very next morning, dozens of online articles suddenly appeared. Every headline pushed the same story. Ex-husband released from prison shuts down female CEO's medical system in revenge. Core technology dispute at Qing Tang triggered by failed marriage. Man imprisoned for assault returns to blackmail ex-wife using company technology. After reading them, I simply asked old Chen, "Who paid for these?" He handed me the investigation results. The payments had been routed through 2 shell companies. The final source was Chen Yi Consulting. I nodded. "Keep the evidence." Old Chen was furious. "Boss Chen, they're trying to make you look like a bitter ex-husband taking revenge. Let them. We won't respond. If we respond too early, we'll waste our best evidence." At 10 that morning, Lawyer Liang called with new findings. The hospital had recovered its original medical records. 3 years ago, Chen Yi had been admitted at 9:20 p.m. His initial injury report, completed at 10:30 p.m., stated there was a possible risk of nerve damage to his right hand. The following day, the report claimed the injury had become much more serious. But the hospital's internal nursing records told a different story. At 10 p.m. that same night, Chen Yi had already used his right hand several times to sign documents. There was something even more important. The deepest cut on his right arm wasn't caused during our fight. The wound showed clear signs of being torn open a second time. According to the medical records, that happened at least 40 minutes after the altercation. In other words, someone had deliberately made his injuries worse. I stared at the documents for a long time without saying a word. Old Chen slammed his fist on the table and cursed under his breath. Before, whenever she worked until dawn, I would wait outside her office for her. When Chen Yi got a fever in the middle of the night and she asked me to bring medicine, I went without hesitation. When the company's system crashed and everyone else panicked, I stayed awake for 40 straight hours, restoring the data piece by piece. When she told me, "Yan Zhao, Chen Yi feels insecure. Don't argue with him," I listened. I didn't argue. I just kept stepping back, giving up more and more of myself until everyone believed I had no boundaries left. Zhao Wantong took a deep breath. "You just got out. I don't want to argue with you. You're not in the right state of mind. Get in the car first. We can talk about the divorce later." I shook my head. There doesn't need to be a later. I held out my phone. On the screen was the first page of the divorce agreement my lawyer had prepared. She looked at it, and her expression darkened. "Xinyan Zhou, 3 years in prison really changed your attitude." "It did," I replied. "Thanks to you." She reached for my arm, but I stepped aside. Her hand froze in midair before her fingers slowly curled back. 3 years ago, that small gesture would have been enough to soften me. Not anymore. She lowered her voice. "Do you still hate me?" "No." "Then why are you doing this?" "Because I don't want anything to do with you anymore." She let out a short laugh, but there was no happiness in it. It was the laugh of someone who felt offended. "You don't want anything to do with me? Xinyan Zhou, do you even realize your situation?" She glanced toward the prison gate. "You just got out. You have a criminal record. No company will hire you. I can give you back your old job as technical advisor. I've kept your room at home. All you have to do is swallow your pride, and everything can go back to the way it was." I almost laughed. She still thought I needed her to give me a job. She still didn't understand. The most valuable seat at Qing Tang Technology had never been the CEO's chair. It was the mahjong engine buried deep inside the company's servers, the one she'd been relying on for the last 5 years. I didn't bother explaining. I picked up my worn canvas bag and walked past her. Behind me, Zhao Wantong called out, Xin Yenzhou I. She stopped herself before continuing, her voice filled with anger. If you walk away today, don't come crying back. I turned around and looked at her. That's exactly what I should have told you 3 years ago. Then I walked toward the curb. The lawyer had already arranged a car for me. The door opened, and old Shin stepped out from the driver's seat. He had once been my mother's student, and for the past 3 years, he had kept Yenzhou Technology running in my absence. The moment he saw me, his eyes turned red. Boss Shin. The title caught Zhao Wantong's attention. Boss. Shin? I didn't explain. I simply got into the car. As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. She was still standing at the prison gate. The wind lifted her coat, making it flutter like a fig leaf that had arrived 3 years too late. At 9:40 that night, old Shin dropped me off at a temporary apartment. It was small but clean. 3 documents were waiting on the desk. The first was the authorization revocation notice for the Mahjong engine. The second was an audit application for Qing Tang Technology's breach of contract. The third was the appeal file for Lu Chen's case from 3 years earlier. I took a shower, changed into clean clothes, and sat down. At exactly 10 p.m. my phone rang. Caller ID Zhao Wantong. I answered. Her voice sounded far more frantic than it had earlier that day. Shun Yenzhou. Is the system alert at Qing Tang related to you? I opened the first document on my desk. In the background, I could hear hurried footsteps and an assistant shouting in panic. President Zhao. The cold chain orders can't be assigned. The North China warehouse is completely locked down. Zhao Wantong tried to stay calm, but anger seeped into her voice. What exactly did you do? You revoked the authorization? Have you lost your mind? She finally exploded. Qing Tang has over 300 active orders. 12 hospitals still have cold chain medicines in transit. If you pull the authorization now, it'll be a disaster. I looked at the confirmation letter from Shengyuan Hosting Center displayed on my computer. The countdown had already begun. I answered calmly. The agreement gave you a 30-day self-inspection period. You ignored it. You kept using the system. You never paid compensation. You never offered an explanation. You simply kept violating the agreement. I don't know anything about any agreement, she shouted. Of course you don't, I replied softly. 3 years ago, you were too busy sending me to prison. She didn't say a word. Neither did I. I let the silence linger until she finally asked in a quiet voice, How much more evidence do you have? Enough to show you the whole truth. Her voice trembled. Then why don't you just give me everything at once? I looked down at my phone. Because some truths have to be uncovered one layer at a time. That's the only way you'll feel what I felt. She took a slow breath. You hate me. I used to. And now I'm busy. Then I ended the call. At 10:30 that night, Lawyer Liang sent me an audio recording. It came from Lu Chenyi's former assistant, who had secretly kept a backup before leaving the company. Lu Chenyi's voice came through the speaker. Shin Yenzhou is too much of a problem. If he doesn't go down, the Mahjong engine will never end up in my hands. Another voice asked, Will President Zhao believe it? Lu Chenyi laughed. As long as he loses his temper and makes a move, Wantong won't have any choice but to trust me. The recording ended. The room fell completely silent. I forwarded the audio to Lawyer Liang, then sent a copy to Zhao Wantong without adding a single word. 5 minutes later, she replied with only 3 words. That's impossible. 10 minutes after that, she called me. I didn't answer. At 11 p.m. Old Chan informed me that Zhao Wantong had driven to Lu Chenyi's apartment. I stood by the window watching the headlights below. The story had finally reached Lu Chenyi. When Zhao Wantong arrived, Lu Chenyi was packing. He lived in a luxury apartment provided by Qing Tang Technology. 2 open suitcases sat in the living room. On the table were his passport, several bank cards, and a stack of documents. She stopped at the doorway without stepping inside. The moment Lu Chenyi saw her, panic flashed across his face before he forced a gentle smile. Wantong, what are you doing here? Without answering, she played the recording. His own voice echoed through the living room. As long as he makes a move, Wantong won't have any choice but to trust me. The recording lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough to tear apart every excuse he had made over the past 3 years. His expression changed immediately. It's fake. She looked at him calmly. I haven't even questioned you yet, and you're already saying it's fake. With AI these days, Chen Yi could fabricate anything. Then why are you packing your bags? His lips twitched. I just wanted to stay out of the spotlight for a while. The board already suspects me, and now you don't trust me either. If I stay, it'll only make things worse. Zhao Wantong finally walked inside. She picked up one of the documents lying on the table. It was a draft equity proxy agreement. The proxy holder was a company connected to Chen Yi Consulting, and the target was part of Qing Tang Technology's employee stock incentive pool before its IPO. Her fingers began to tremble. What is this? Lu Chenyi reached toward the paper. She pulled it away. Don't touch it. For the first time, he truly panicked. Wantong, listen to me. It's just a capital arrangement. She looked at him coldly. Another capital arrangement? She raised her eyes. 3 years ago, when you forged that agreement, you said the exact same thing. His voice rose. I did all of this for Qing Tang. For Qing Tang. Or for yourself? His face stiffened. She continued flipping through the documents. The more she read, the paler she became. There were payment records from Chen Yi Consulting, invoices for external PR firms, shell company ownership documents, and an unsigned agreement titled Mahong Engine Derivative Revenue Long-Term Management Agreement. Party A was left blank. Party B was Chen Yi Consulting. She slowly looked up. You still wanted the Mahong engine? Lu Chenyi clenched his teeth. If Shen Yenzhou hadn't locked down the authorization, Qing Tang would already be listed by now. He stepped closer. Wantong, have you ever considered that he kept those clauses in the agreement from the beginning because he wanted leverage over you? She didn't answer. Seeing her silent, he pressed on. He never truly loved you. He only helped you so he could control you. He kept the core system under his own company's name because he was waiting for the day he could use it against you. 3 years earlier, Zhao Wantong would have believed every word. But not anymore. She had already seen the original agreement with her own eyes. Back then, Qing Tang Technology didn't even have enough money to survive. Shen Yenzhou had given the company the authorization free of charge. He had mortgaged his own patent to secure financing for Qing Tang. He had even written into the contract that Qing Tang could use the system internally without paying additional fees. The agreement itself had never been the problem. What turned it into a ticking time bomb was Lu Chenyi and Qing Tang crossing the boundaries that had been clearly written from the very beginning. Zhao Wantong spoke slowly. He gave me a chance. Lu Chenyi froze. What? 3 years ago, she said quietly. He asked me to read that agreement. She looked straight at him. I didn't. For a brief moment, Lu Chenyi's expression darkened. But he quickly put on the same wounded look he had used so many times before. Wantong, are you blaming me for what happened to him? I only have one question for you, Zhao Wantong said, her voice calm but heavy. That night, did you deliberately provoke him? Lu Chenyi didn't answer. Did you intentionally step on that USB drive? Still no answer. Did you deliberately make sure I walked in just as he threw the punch? A shadow finally crossed Lu Chenyi's face. So what if I did? Zhao Wantong's breathing caught. It was as if Lu Chenyi had finally given up pretending. He kicked one of the suitcases aside. I've waited for you all these years. Why should he be the one who gets to be your husband? Why does he hide behind the scenes, never fighting for anything, yet still end up with everything? He stared at her. Wantong, I understand you better than he ever did. I'm the one who's truly meant to stand beside you. Zhao Wantong instinctively took half a step back. So, you framed him and sent him to prison. Lu Chenyi laughed. No. He looked her in the eyes. You sent him there. Those words hit Zhao Wantong like a bolt of lightning. She stood frozen. Lu Chenyi continued without mercy. You signed the documents. You refused the settlement. You approved the legal statement. Wantong. Without you, none of it would have been possible. Every bit of color drained from her face. Just then, someone knocked on the door. Lawyer Liang walked in with two investigators. Chen Yi spun around. Zhao Wantong turned as well. Lawyer Liang looked at her briefly before speaking. President Zhao, Chen Yi is suspected of forgery, embezzlement, and commercial fraud. The evidence has already been submitted. Please cooperate with the investigation. Chen Yi exploded. What right do you have to barge into my home? One of the investigators calmly showed his badge. Mr. Liu, please come with us. Chen Yi looked desperately at Zhao Wantong. Wantong, say something. She didn't move. He became visibly frantic. Don't forget who stayed by your side all these years. For the 3 years Xin Yanzhou was in prison. I was the one with you. Zhao Wantong slowly closed her eyes. You stole those 3 years. Chen Yi looked like he'd been struck. His face twisted with panic. He tried to rush toward her, but the investigators restrained him. As they escorted him away, he shouted one last time before the door closed. Zhao Wantong, you think Xin Yanzhou will forgive you? Keep dreaming. The person he hates most isn't me. It's you. Those words hit her like nails, pinning her to the spot. She stood there motionless for a long time. Half an hour later, she arrived at Qing Tang Technology's old archives room. The paper records from 3 years earlier were still stored there. The legal director accompanied her as they pulled out box after box of old case files. One by one, Zhao Wantong broke the seals herself. She saw the legal explanations she had signed. She saw the company loss assessment stamped with Qing Tang's official seal. She saw the edited surveillance screenshots Chen Yi had submitted. Then she found the copy of the forged authorization agreement I had handed over back then. It had been filed under the defendant's evidence. In the upper right corner, someone had written 4 words. No need to accept. She recognized the handwriting immediately. It was hers. Back then, someone from the legal department had asked, President Zhao, Mr. Shun keeps insisting the authorization agreement is forged. Should we verify it? She had answered without hesitation. No need. He's just trying to avoid responsibility. Now those same 4 words stared back at her from the page. They no longer looked like a routine note. They looked like evidence of a crime she had committed against her own past. That evening, Zhao Wantong called an emergency board meeting. I attended as well. She sat at the head of the conference table, but the confidence and authority she always carried were gone. When the meeting began, she didn't talk about the company's crisis first. Instead, she turned on the projector. The first slide showed the recovered surveillance footage from 3 years ago. The second displayed the preliminary forensic report confirming Chen Yi had forged the signature. The third listed the suspicious cash flow records from Chen Yi Consulting. The fourth showed the official statement Qing Tang Technology had submitted back then, the one she had personally signed. She slowly stood up. I take full responsibility as the company's primary manager for everything that happened. The conference room fell silent. No one spoke. Chairman Chen Jingxing looked at her with a grim expression. Wantong. This isn't something that can be explained away by simply calling it a management failure. She nodded quietly. I know. Then, for the first time in 3 years, she looked directly at me in front of every director. Xin Yanzhou. The materials Qing Tang submitted back then were never properly verified. As the person who signed them, I am willing to cooperate fully with your appeal. The moment she finished speaking, quiet murmurs spread throughout the conference room. I sat across from her, my hand resting on the documents. I didn't say anything right away. Zhao Wantong's eyes were red as she struggled to steady her voice. I'm also willing to make a public correction. I looked at her. 3 years ago, I had waited for those words. I waited until the verdict was announced, until the prison gates closed behind me, until I spent my first winter behind bars, until the anniversary of my mother's death, when all I could do was bow toward the world beyond those prison walls. Now those words had finally come, but instead of feeling relieved, I only felt one thing. They had come too late. I slid another document across the table. Zhao Wantong lowered her head. The title was impossible to miss. Marriage Dissolution and Property Settlement Agreement. Her hand froze in midair. I spoke calmly. Making things right is one matter. Ending our marriage is another. She slowly looked up at me. I continued. Zhao Wantong. The truth doesn't erase the divorce. The light in her eyes faded little by little. After Chen Yi was taken away for investigation, Qing Tang Technology officially entered an internal audit. When a wall starts to collapse, the first people to run aren't the enemies. They're the ones who spent years pretending they saw nothing. Someone from the finance department anonymously submitted detailed payment records from Chen Yi Consulting. Someone from the tech department turned over chat logs showing Chen Yi ordering employees to delete old database records. Someone from the legal department admitted that the supplementary authorization agreement had never actually been signed, even though Chen Yi had repeatedly used it as the basis for internal approvals. Even someone from the hospital came forward. They confirmed that before Chen Yi's injury assessment, he had left the ward for 15 minutes, and when he returned, the bleeding from his wound had become noticeably worse. None of this evidence had appeared out of nowhere. It had always existed. 3 years ago, no one was willing to bring it forward for me. Now that Chen Yi had fallen, everyone suddenly found the courage to tell the truth. I wasn't grateful, but I would use every piece of it. Lawyer Liang organized everything into 2 separate cases. The first focused on my appeal. It proved there had been serious omissions in the original investigation, that Qing Tang Technology had submitted incomplete evidence, and that Chen Yi was suspected of provoking the conflict and fabricating evidence. The second was a commercial lawsuit. It sought compensation from Qing Tang Technology for unauthorized expansion of the Mahong engine, false ownership claims, and profits earned through infringement. Both cases moved forward at the same time. Zhao Wantong had nowhere left to retreat. The board suspended her from her position as president. When the announcement became public, she was already waiting outside the courthouse. That day was the hearing for my appeal. She stood at the bottom of the courthouse steps wearing a black coat. The moment she saw me, she walked over. "I'll tell them everything I know." I nodded. "Thank you for your cooperation." Those 4 polite words made her eyes tremble. Once, I had spoken to her with warmth. Now I spoke with courtesy. Courtesy creates distance, and distance marks the end. Inside the courtroom, as the person who had signed the original documents, Zhao Wantong admitted that Qing Tang Technology had never fully verified the forged authorization dispute before submitting its statement. She also admitted they had never recovered all of the hotel's surveillance footage. The judge asked her, "Why didn't you verify the evidence at the time?" She was silent for a long moment. Finally, she answered, "Because I believed Chen Yi. I assumed Shenyan Zhou was only trying to shift the blame." The judge continued, "And what was that judgment based on?" Her voice became even quieter. "My prejudice against him." I sat nearby listening. I never looked up. Prejudice. That word was more honest than misunderstanding. She never lacked the chance to discover the truth. She had simply decided I was guilty before looking at the evidence. After the hearing, Zhao Wantong hurried after me. "Yan Zhou." I stopped walking. She stood in front of me. "I'm sorry." It was the first time she had said those words completely. No excuses. No company. No Chen Yi. Just an apology. I looked at her. Tears rolled down her face and landed on the collar of her coat. "I know it's too late." I nodded. "It really is." Her face turned even paler. "I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. I won't forgive you." The words hit her like a physical blow. She nearly lost her balance. I continued calmly. "Zhao Wantong, helping with the appeal is something you should have done. Apologizing is also something you should have done. But neither of those is a bargaining chip." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Is there really no chance for us anymore?" I didn't answer. Instead, I took the divorce papers out of my briefcase and held them toward her. "Sign them." She stared at the papers for a long time but didn't reach for them. Finally, she asked softly, "What if I don't sign? Then I'll file for divorce in court." "I know." I replied. She stood there in silence for a moment. Then she continued, "Yesterday, I went back to our house. I didn't say anything. I found your old notebook in the study." I knew exactly which notebook she meant. It was the project journal I had written when Qing Tang Technology was just getting started. On the very first page, I had written, "Wantong wants to build China's most reliable pharmaceutical cold chain system, so I'll help her build the foundation." Back then, I meant every word. Her eyes turned red. "I never read it before." I nodded lightly. "I know." She lowered her head, holding the notebook tightly in her arms. I kept thinking, if I had opened it even once, if I had read even one page, maybe none of this would have happened. I looked at her calmly. "But you didn't." She bit her lip, unable to deny it. "I thought I understood you. You thought you didn't need to." She closed her eyes as tears rolled down her face. "I really loved you. I know. But I trusted the wrong person." I looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "No, you didn't just trust the wrong person." She slowly looked up at me. "You chose not to trust the right one." Those words left her completely speechless. After a while, she asked quietly, "Will we ever see each other again?" I thought for a moment. "If the appeal hearing requires it, yes." "And after that?" I looked at the divorce certificate in my hand. "Probably not." She forced a smile, but it was more painful than crying. "So, this is really the end?" "Yes." She stood there for a long time before finally saying, "Take care of yourself. You too." I turned and walked away. This time, she didn't try to stop me. She simply stood on the courthouse steps, watching my back disappear into the crowd. I never looked back. Some people are meant to walk with you through life. Others only teach you how to leave. A month later, the appeal verdict was officially announced. The court ruled that there had been significant omissions and errors in the original case. Key evidence had not been fully examined, and several important facts had been overlooked. My conviction was overturned. The criminal record that had followed me for 3 years was officially cleared. When I walked out of the courthouse, the sky was brighter than I remembered. Old Chen was waiting outside with Lawyer Liang. Old Chen grinned. "President Chen, welcome back." Lawyer Liang reached out his hand. "Congratulations." I shook his hand. "Thank you." Across the street, several reporters were waiting. One of them asked loudly, "Mr. Shen, now that your name has finally been cleared, what's your biggest feeling?" I stopped for a second before answering. "I got my justice back." Another reporter asked, "Do you plan to return to Qing Tang Technology?" I smiled faintly. "No." "Do you hate Zhao Wantong?" I looked toward the busy street. "Hate takes energy. I'd rather spend mine building something new." That afternoon, Yenzhou Technology officially announced a strategic partnership with Shengyuan Holdings. The Mahong engine entered its next phase of independent commercialization under Yenzhou Technology. More clients signed new agreements. More engineers who had once left Qingtang quietly returned. Old Gao was one of them. When he walked into the office, he smiled awkwardly. "President Chen, I'm back." I stood up and shook his hand. "Welcome home." He laughed, but his eyes had already turned red. "This time, I'm not leaving again." "You don't have to." The office slowly became lively again. Code filled the screens. Meetings resumed. The sound of keyboards echoed through the room. Everything felt like a fresh beginning. As for Qing Tang Technology, its IPO was officially suspended. The board completed a full restructuring. Several executives resigned. Chen Yi was formally charged with forgery, commercial fraud, embezzlement, and multiple intellectual property violations. The legal proceedings that followed had nothing to do with me anymore. One evening, Old Chen walked into my office carrying a stack of reports. "President Chen, what is it?" Qing Tang sent over another settlement proposal. I didn't even look up. "Send it to legal." They also included a handwritten letter. I paused. "For me?" He nodded. I took the envelope. On the front were only 4 familiar words. To Xin Yenzhou. I looked at it for a few seconds before placing it back on the desk. I don't need to read it. Old Chen asked softly. Not even once? I smiled. Some chapters don't need an epilogue. He understood. Without another word, he picked up the letter and left. Outside the office window, the city lights gradually came on. 3 years ago, I had lost everything. 3 years later, I hadn't taken back the past. I had simply taken back myself. And that was enough. I also found the letter you wrote to my father. She held it tightly, her voice trembling. You promised him you'd help me protect Qing Tang. Her eyes filled with tears. So all these years, you weren't fighting for it. You were protecting it for me. I looked at her. She finally understood. But understanding too late is no different from never understanding at all. I said quietly, Zhao Wantong. The promise I made to your father ended 3 years ago. She looked at me anxiously. What about us? We're over too. Her lips parted, and tears rolled down her face. People passing by glanced at her curiously. The old Zhao Wantong would never have broken down like this in public. She had always been composed, confident, and strong. She never let anyone see her vulnerable. But now, she clutched the divorce certificate like it was a verdict that had come far too late. What if I hadn't mentioned Chen Yi that day outside the prison? She asked. What if the first thing I'd said was that I was sorry? I interrupted her. There are no what-ifs. She froze. You had countless chances, I said. At the anniversary banquet, I asked you to look at the documents. In the hospital hallway, I told you Chen Yi had forged my signature. Outside the police station, I asked you to verify everything before the trial. After I went to prison, Lawyer Liang applied to retrieve the original surveillance footage. Old Gao warned you not to tamper with the system's ownership. Every single time you chose Chen Yi. So it wasn't one sentence that destroyed us. It was every choice you made along the way. Zhao Wantong lowered her head. I know. Her voice was so soft it was almost impossible to hear. I just can't accept it. That's your problem. She swayed when I said those words. I didn't reach out to catch her. It wasn't because I was being cruel. It was because I'd finally learned not to carry the consequences of her choices anymore. Old Chen's car was waiting by the curb. I walked toward it. Behind me, Zhao Wantong called out, Xin Yanzhou. Will you ever think of me again? I opened the car door. Yes. A small spark of hope appeared in her eyes. I looked at her one last time. When I do, it'll remind me never to make the same mistake again. The light in her eyes disappeared. I got into the car. As we drove away from the Civil Affairs Bureau, I caught one last glimpse of her in the rearview mirror. She stood there alone, growing smaller and smaller in the distance. I never looked back. Yanzhou Technology's new office was on the 26th floor of Shengyuan Tower. It wasn't large, but the view was excellent. Old Gao had already brought back several longtime employees. The moment I walked in, they all stood up. President Shin. This time, hearing those words didn't feel uncomfortable. I walked over to the conference table. 3 new cooperation agreements were waiting there. Hongyuan, Beikong, Jizhou. All 3 clients had officially signed transition service contracts. Xingyuan Holdings had also increased its investment. Yanzhou Technology was officially starting again. Old Gao handed me a new development plan. President Shen, if we begin work on Mahong Engine 2 now, we can have a test version ready in 6 months. I flipped through the proposal. It still had his familiar style. Steady. Meticulous. Every detail carefully planned with room for future expansion. I closed the file. Let's do it. Old Gao's eyes turned red. You're finally back. I looked out the window. In the distance stood Qing Tang Technology's headquarters. The glass walls still reflected the sunlight, but they no longer had the confidence they once carried. I said quietly, I'm not coming back. Everyone looked at me. I closed the folder. I'm starting over. That same night, Zhao Wantong returned to Qing Tang's old office. She had been suspended from her position and was only allowed temporary access to collect her personal belongings. Many offices had already been sealed. The seat where Chen Yi used to sit was empty. The place by the window where I used to stand was empty too. She opened the bottom drawer of the bookcase. Inside was an old notebook. Its cover had yellowed with age. The first page was written in my handwriting. Qing Tang Phase 1 System Risk Checklist. The second page contained the financing plan. The third page was the draft of her very first roadshow speech, covered with my handwritten revisions. Tucked inside the last page was a photograph. In it, she was asleep at the conference table. I was standing beside her, quietly draping my coat over her shoulders. Back then, Chen Yi hadn't come back yet. Back then, she'd wake up in the middle of the night, smile at me, and whisper, "Yanzhou, I'm glad you're here." Holding the photo tightly, Zhao Wantong slowly sank to the floor. For the first time, she broke down completely. Outside the office, her secretary stood silently by the door, not daring to step inside. Just then, her phone rang. It was a notification from the board. Qing Tang Technology's IPO guidance had officially been suspended. Chen Yi's assets had been frozen. The suspicious cash flow involving Chen Yi Consulting was now under formal investigation. Yanzhou Technology officially took over the transition services for the 3 major clients. One notification after another appeared on Zhao Wantong's phone. She stared at the screen as tears quietly fell onto it. Only then did she truly understand. The phone call I made on the day I was released from prison wasn't just about revoking the authorization. It was about taking myself back, taking back my trust, ending our marriage, and taking away every foundation I had spent years building for her. That night, she completely broke down. But it had nothing to do with me anymore. I stood in the new office of Yanzhou Technology when lawyer Liang sent me a message. The court has officially accepted the appeal for supplementary review. Chen Yi's case is moving forward at the same time. I replied with a single word. Good. A few minutes later, President Tao sent over the documents for our new project. Old Gao looked at me and asked, "President Shen, should we hold a meeting tonight?" I glanced at the clock. It was 9 o'clock. For years, this was the time I was always cleaning up Qing Tang's problems for Zhao Wantong. Now, I didn't have to anymore. I shut down my computer. No meeting. Everyone go home early. Old Gao paused for a moment before smiling. Understood. I picked up my coat and walked out of the office. As the elevator descended, my phone lit up again. It was a message from Zhao Wantong. Just one sentence. "Yanzhou, I finally understand what I've lost." I looked at the message for a few seconds. Then I locked the screen without replying. The elevator doors opened. The cool night air swept across my face. I slipped my phone into my pocket and walked into the crowd. Behind me were the echoes of Qing Tang's collapse. Ahead of me was a future that belonged to me alone. This time, I wasn't carrying anyone else's company. I wasn't carrying anyone else's mistakes. I was simply Shen Yanzhou, free, and finally at peace.